power of networking is incredible, but networking is so much bigger than I feel like what people normally define it as. They're like, yeah, I sent you like a LinkedIn request or I went to that one fair. That's not networking.
Yeah.
Networking is relationships. And so how are you building relationships?
Hi, everybody. My name is Channelle McNutt, graduate of San Diego State University, class of 2013 and 2017. I'm also a member of the SDSU Alumni Board of Advisors, and I am honored to be kicking off the pilot series, The Power of the Aztec Network, where we're having career conversations with alumni across our community, providing tangible tips and tricks for you to successfully navigate today's job market.
Hey everyone, I'm Kodi Bobier, class of 2014. Really excited to be here on the podcast today, talking about insights and perspectives that I've gained through both my tech and entrepreneurial journey.
Hi, Kodi.
Hi, Channelle.
Welcome back to campus.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm just so happy to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
It feels a little weird being back on campus, if I'm
Okay.
being real, but it's exciting.
When's the last time that you've been back?
Oh gosh, when my brother graduated,
Okay.
this was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, and it was, but obviously just at Vieja. So like going around the actual campus and stuff is weird. And I feel like that was such a different presence because everyone's graduating, so all families are there.
Yeah.
But being on campus when it's all these students just walking around, I'm like, especially seeing the little ambassadors doing their tours and their polos.
That used to be me.
That used to be- I was like, I could walk backwards too.
Yes. Well, so excited to have you back on campus. And I know that I've known you for many years, followed kind of just how your career has blossomed and taken shape in so many powerful ways. And, I have the privilege to know you, but I'm curious, let's just start off with sharing a little bit about who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So super excited to be here. I honestly feel very, very blessed. So I'm from San Diego, like San Diego native, was born and raised here.
Okay.
San Diego State was a university that I was blessed, and I came in as a transfer student. I don't know if you
No.
knew that. Yeah, so I came in as a transfer and was eager. I was like, I'm
Okay.
getting involved. I don't care if I didn't come as a freshman, but grew up here. And then shortly after graduating, I went to China, came back, and then I got my first job in recruiting. And so I've honestly been in the talent acquisition space for, God, what are we at, 12 years now?
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's been a long career, but my first true step into the world of recruiting and tech programs was when I took a risk and I left San Diego and I moved to the Bay for a recruiting job at Google. And that's kind of what kicked off the entire thing.
Okay.
And so fast forward to today, kind of leading recruitment strategy and then also now an entrepreneur. And so just kind of figuring out what I do and kind of navigating all of that at the same time.
It's awesome.
Yes.
Fired up.
Fired up.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have to dig a little bit because you
Yeah.
went from graduation to China, and I'm like, we gotta talk about that. So what took you to China? I mean, what was the story there?
Absolutely. So if there's one piece of advice that I could give to everybody, it's like, do your due diligence and do
Okay.
some research. I ended up taking a job that ended up being a scam.
What?
And so, talk about a challenge early on. I had to pivot
Whoa.
and I ended up as a college graduate on my mom's couch, literally the typical cliche.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I was only there for 9 days,
Okay.
came back, and thank goodness the power of networking. Somebody from one of the organization at San Diego State had heard that I had come back. She just got promoted. Her job opened up, interviewed, and got it. And so, yeah,
Oh
it was
my
crazy. It was
gosh.
crazy.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, talk about, to your point, pivoting,
Yeah.
leveraging your community and your network. I mean, and I'm sure just everything that you've done on campus helped facilitate that. But wow, that's scary.
Slightly. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not gonna ask too much more. I mean, that was a lot.
We'll get coffee later and talk about
Okay,
it.
yeah. Okay. So tech recruiting leader, entrepreneur, moving, shaking, making things happen. What are a few things that keep you grounded? What's your personal mission? Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, just going back to staying grounded, I would say, truthfully, it's all about the people I surround myself with. I think with anything, they are going to keep me grounded and rooted in what's truly important because I think it's so easy, obviously, in this day and age, especially to get caught up. And
Yep.
it's easy to get caught up. And don't get me wrong, like sometimes I find myself like, let me take a step back. And so I think really what it is it's my family and my friends.
Yep.
And focusing on them versus myself, I think is what keeps me grounded and in tune with what really matters. Um, I'm on a mission to become a billionaire of time.
Okay.
I truly, like when I think about my life, I have been so intent, and it's gonna like I feel like now I'm gonna use two words, but
Yeah.
I've been really intent, especially the past, I would say 3 years of living and doing everything in my life with intention, just making sure that
Mm.
it aligns to my personal values
Yeah.
of what that means. And although I don't have kids,
Mm-hmm.
my 6-year-old nephew is one of my best friends. And
Yeah.
so when he has something that's big for him, I still treat that like a parent would, where I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to let my best friend down. And
Mm-hmm.
so decisions that I've been making in life are, do those align
Yep.
with where I want my life to go, how I want to spend my time, and who I want to be around?
So powerful. I mean, being intentional, alignment, so huge. But you said a phrase, a billionaire of time.
Mhm.
Okay, so like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I have been loving this book, The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom.
Okay,
And he
yes.
talks about the different types of wealth. And when I got to the time section, that one really hit me because a lot of our time is dictated and owned by other people or other entities or companies. And it's not to say that, of course, time can't be controlled in some ways by others, but ultimately the decision is mine,
Yep.
and I want to make sure that where I spend our limited time is on stuff that actually matters.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
real.
that's what I want to own. Like money's great and money helps, but I want to be a billionaire of time.
Hello.
Yes.
Don't we
hello.
all?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, great. So time. Let's
Yeah.
kind of dig in there, and specifically time at San Diego State. Just give us a little flavor of what you were doing, because I know what you did, but share with the people, okay? Just a little bit about what you did, groups that you were involved with, and then from there I'll kind of ask a little bit more.
Okay, I love it. Oh gosh. I really took advantage of
Yeah.
my transfer time here, didn't I? So actually when I rewind, where it really started was I was at new student orientation.
Mm-hmm.
I was hearing a speech by Kodi Bobier, and he was like, "Get involved." And I was like, "Well, if that Kodi says to get involved, I'm going to get involved." And so I went to the AS table at lunch and I asked, I was like, "I want to get involved. I'm a transfer." And it was Kodi. And we literally just talked, and he was like, "Go look at different orgs, sign up for an AS committee, all this fun stuff." And better believe I did.
Yeah.
So the first thing I became a part of was the SDSU ambassadors.
Okay.
So that was such an incredible, era of my San Diego State time. I think that and associated students, you truly are representatives of the university as a whole. So what an honor to have been selected to represent San Diego State in that way. And then it kind of just started to roll from there. I got involved with Alpha Kappa Psi Business Fraternity,
Okay.
and then Rotaract, which was really aligned with a lot of my values, giving back, volunteering. That's been something that's been really close to my heart forever. And
Yeah.
and then I joined Phi Delta Theta. I was on several AS committees.
Yep.
And so it was just incredible. I mean, I think
Everything.
similar to your time here,
Yeah.
like when you see people who, in your opinion, you're like, they're doing it right because they're going to leave this campus having no regrets
Yeah.
of what they did, And I mean, even looking back, I think actually you were there when I ran for an AS seat.
Yes, I
when we did
remember.
elections and I lost.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I remember in that moment, I was like, oh, all right. I was like, this is something I truthfully hadn't experienced
Yep.
during my time at State. But it was so incredible
Yep.
to run, and just the opportunity that stuff exists here. It was great.
Yes. And I mean, and to do that as a transfer student, I mean, it takes a whole lot of courage, a whole lot of curiosity. And so I'm just so happy to hear that you did that. I mean, I benefited from it just knowing you and seeing you on campus. What was your major?
I was communication.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but honestly, I don't know. I truly went into it not knowing what I was going to do. I
Yeah.
started off as business
Okay.
in the junior college, and then I failed accounting. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I should switch it up.
Pivot. It was a,
Pivot.
powerful
And then
pivot.
who knew I would be here now owning a business. And so
Yeah.
I got to get used to the accounting anyways. But
Hello.
yeah, exactly.
Full circle. So what did you take away? I mean, so you're involved as an ambassador, you're involved with Associated Students. I mean, what's your advice to students today that maybe are nervous to get involved, aren't really connecting and building community? Kind of what's your advice to them in navigating that?
Absolutely. I would say it is scary because you're absolutely right. I think coming in as a transfer student presented its own challenges just the same way I can imagine coming in as a freshman. You're timid, you're amongst all these people, depending on where you're coming from, you might have moved.
Yep.
Where, I came in technically, truly as an quote unquote adult. And so I
Mm,
did have some, I would say, benefit or some pros working for me, but that at the same time, I was siloed because they were just like, well, who's this guy that's like 2, 3 years older than all of us just now starting stuff? And
yep.
so what I would say to students though is if there's anything I took away from my experience at San Diego State, get uncomfortable and
Yeah.
be okay with that. If anything, celebrate being
Mm,
uncomfortable because growth happens there. And I
yep.
think you know that, I know that. Everyone that I have learned from has put themselves in a situation where it's been awkward sometimes or
Yeah.
you feel out of place. But I think that that's wonderful. I
Yep.
really do. And I actually, I mean, you know this too. Like I've moved so many times, like
Yep.
city, literally
I know. I'm
geography.
like watching on Instagram. I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, where are you at?
And I think I have come to actually thrive in change
Yeah.
because change is inevitable.
Mm,
And so, really when I think back to what I would tell any other student, it's just like take the opportunities. And if it feels like something that's like, or like, oh my gosh, jump in.
yep.
Like feet first, just go. Just
Hmm.
dive in because the biggest regret that you could have is that it didn't work.
Yep.
But I don't want to live with the what if,
No.
and so I would say that like don't allow the what ifs to control your life.
Yep.
So take the opportunity, take the risk.
And I think it's such a powerful reminder because sometimes it can sound kind of cliche, like go be involved and build your community. But I mean, it's real. I mean, I'm curious for you today of your current network and like friends, how many of those folks are people that you met while at San Diego State?
All of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Like when yeah, I mean, if I think back, most of my best friends
Yeah.
are San Diego State alum.
Wow.
And it's just it's actually it's incredible. I was literally catching up with a friend the other day and actually you and Brandon came up
Yep.
and we were talking about a memory and I was just like, how fun though is that I mean, I haven't seen Brandon in years, but he is still part of like a core memory
Yeah.
that I have. And when I look back, the weddings I've been in, the baby showers, I'm a godparent to friends now. It's San Diego State. And don't get me wrong, yes, I have, of course, best friends that aren't affiliated, but they do take up the majority. And so
Hmm.
again, going back to the cliche, like the friends you meet in college are the friends forever. It's sure looking that way.
Exactly. Facts.
Facts. Yeah.
It's tracking. So let's go back because I think it's so important to really reinforce the power of, our Aztec community. And it seemed like first job post scam Google was
Mhm.
through a referral, a friend,
No, it was headhunted.
headhunted. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you get into recruiting? I mean, you're a comms major, you're coming back from China, you're trying to figure it out.
And then what?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's actually really funny because so when I came back from China, I was job hunting and then a friend from AK Sci had reached out and she was like, "Hey, would you be interested in this job?" Well, the job required a year of recruiting experience, which obviously I didn't have a year of career experience, but I did work in the office of out-of-state admissions and recruiting.
Hello.
So the hiring manager counted it. Yeah, because
Whoa.
since I had worked there 20 hours a week for 2 years, she was like, "Well, I'll just look at it as 1 year."
Okay.
And so but it was again, it just went back to the network, and
Yep.
I don't wanna say never, but it's unlikely that I would have gotten that opportunity if it wasn't for knowing her in AKSI, because then
Mhm.
otherwise there would have been no opportunity to create that. And so I was at that job for about 8 months, but where Google came into play, I was sitting at the kitchen table actually with my mom, and I got an email, and it was just and it literally said, "Interested in Google recruiter role."
Mm.
I thought it was a spam
Yeah.
because especially back then, I think you remember too, like Google was peaking.
Yep.
I mean, they were at the epitome. And I think for someone that's not an engineer, and especially like San Diego State, watching SDSU grow in
Yeah.
everything they've done, research, rankings, everything. But especially back then, they didn't take us seriously.
Yeah.
When we were in the job market, why would we hire somebody from a party school? So an SDSU student in recruiting, not even an engineer, I would have never dreamt of a Google job.
Mhm.
And So I deleted the email.
Yep.
They emailed again 3 days later.
Okay.
And so I showed my mom and I was just like, spam at its finest,
Yeah.
like, and she was like, what if it's real? And so I replied back, interviewed, long behold, it was real.
Okay.
And it's actually really funny because, when I think back, as scary as, the scam job was in China, that story though actually was
Mm,
honestly kind of like a ticket. And that's why I always tell people, I'm like, everything in your life, good or bad,
yep.
it's there for a reason. And so I actually told that story. The
Mm,
recruiter asked why I had a gap. And of course, back then too, pre-COVID, like
yep.
gaps really mattered. Like I feel like
Absolutely.
they don't matter as much today. But
Yeah.
so I told her the story and she was like, what? And so I ended up having to tell it in every interview.
Mm.
And then, yeah, about 8 months into past China, I was back. I was working for Google and living in the Bay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that I want to pull out here because there are things that I hear about that there's research on. Your story is really just highlighting it even more. So, one, I want to talk about transferable skills because you had an on campus job as a student, right? If I'm tracking Office of Admissions,
Mhm.
and you were able to turn that into leverageable experience for the role.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, did the recruiter kind of identify that or did you kind of flip it that way? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of flipped it like that
Okay.
because so when I was applying, she had asked, and her name was Heather. She literally gave me my shot in the corporate world. I would be forever thankful for her. But she literally had said, she was like, well, what type of recruiting was that?
Mm,
So I went into it and that job, I mean, we really did do so much. We were doing follow-ups the same way a recruiter would do.
mm,
And then we had to go through the systems. We had call banks that we had to do, in-person events where we were literally selling. And so I took that and I was just like, well, in a recruiting position, you're trying to close someone on an offer. I had to close someone to come in here and spend money or, network. Same thing as an ambassador. I even pulled that in. And I was like, when I'm giving tours, you are kind of selling the campus. I mean, you actually are
absolutely.
selling the campus. And
Hmm.
obviously it's a beautiful campus. So the sell's kind of easy, but it was it really was so transferable. And so I think I love that you brought that up because I get that question so much. There's a
Mm,
lot of students that continue to reach out to me through orgs
yep.
and they're like, hey Cody, I know you were in this with us 12 years ago. And that's one of the biggest things they asked. They were like, I don't have that direct. And I'm like, stop looking at just the direct experience, like
Yes.
figure out a way. And now you have so many tools
Yep.
at your disposal. Like you can actually use chat gpt and say like, this is everything I have.
Hmm.
This is like, is this transferable? Help me understand that.
Yep.
Resources on campus, this just insurmountable amount of resources available for students. And so the transferable skills thing is huge because the market's only getting tougher. And
Yes.
so you got to figure out how to do it. And there's always a way.
I just
Always.
love that. I love that. I love that because, the involvement on campus, the experiences make a difference, right?
Absolutely.
And so to think 12 years later that your job in the Office of Admissions and ambassador was really laying the foundation for like an awesome career, right? I mean, wow.
Oh,
That's a
that's kind
test.
of crazy to
Yeah.
think about.
I mean, that's what it's like. I'm feeling it. I'm like, wow, like you didn't know that as a student on
No,
campus. You're hustling, you like to, and to think that that really was some of the like early building blocks. That's huge.
absolutely. And I had no idea I wanted to go into recruiting. So to your point,
Yeah.
it was laying a foundation for something I never imagined.
Mm,
Because most of us, honestly, most people in recruiting, we don't dream of recruiting careers
okay.
usually. Like that's a
I've
job
thought that.
most of us fall into
Okay.
100%. It's
Wow.
9 times out of 10, we fell into recruiting. It's
Okay.
usually not something we seek out, or at
Okay.
least that we know about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your superpower as a recruiter?
Oh gosh. You know, I actually think about this not from a recruiting lens, but I do think about this a lot in general. I really do think that my empathy is my
Mm,
superpower in life.
yep.
I just have this innate ability that sometimes is also a curse. Like it's also my kryptonite
Yeah.
because I can sometimes empath so hard
Yeah.
that I can really feel for it. But when I'm
Mm,
getting on conversations with candidates or I'm talking through with frustrated hiring managers, I can truly understand where they're coming from. It's not just some, BS like, oh, yeah, no, totally understand. I'm like, no, I really feel for you.
yeah.
I completely understand. And I was like, I just want you to know that my goal here is like, let's figure this out. Like, let's find a way. Cause I'm also the type too, like I don't typically meet, like I don't find myself like meeting fire with fire. Like
Okay.
that's not how I approach stuff, even if it's coming in hot
Mm,
or anxious or scared.
yeah.
It's like, well, let me help you. Let me
Hmm.
find, let me figure out. And I think that that's lended really well in both my personal and my professional life.
Yeah. Oh, the empathy piece is so huge. I mean, and I think about San Diego State. One of the things I loved about it and continue to love about it is the diversity,
Hmm.
right? The different people, the different backgrounds. And I just think about how powerful empathy is in navigating a campus like San Diego State, right?
Absolutely.
And navigating life and how valuable that is. When I think about empathy too, there's a little bit of vulnerability there. And I feel like you're so good with that. You model vulnerability, and I think it creates space for others to be
Yeah.
vulnerable. And I'm sure that, you know, has a big impact in your entrepreneurship journey, your journey in tech and beyond. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, so we've talked a little bit about, involvement on campus, your transition to the recruiting industry, if you will. I'm curious, what are some misconceptions that you think new grads have in entering the job market?
Oh my goodness. Where do I start?
Okay. We got time. Okay.
Love y'all. Yeah, I love all of you. Yes. Sending all of the good vibes your way. No, I think one of the biggest misconceptions, truly, and I think one is just this idea that it's just going to come to you.
Mm,
As a new grad, oftentimes that 5, however many years you're on campus, you think you have more time than you do.
yeah.
And that time flies. And I think where I was going with that is that you think that by the time you graduate, you're just going to get a job, everything's going to work out, all of this. And I hope it does. But unfortunately, because you're kind of going into that with this mindset,
Yeah.
you're not doing what you should be doing to adequately prepare.
Yep.
And so I think it's just this like interesting cycle
Yeah.
of you get into college, you're doing all of the fun stuff, and
Yeah.
then you get to spring semester of senior year and you're like, "Oh, I have to have a job after this? Like
Yeah.
what am I going to do?"
Yeah.
And so I think that that's probably the biggest misconception. Actually, if I
Mm,
really pinpoint it, is just this idea that you have more time than you actually do.
yep. Yep. And it's so real. I was, definitely had that mentality too, where it's like, I feel like part of it is for me in college, it's kind of structured in a way, right? Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, there's a plan, there's a roadmap. Then you get to senior year and it's like, wait, the roadmap is kind of evolving into a place and space that we don't know.
Mhm.
And so what I'm hearing is kind of the mindset and the action of finding a job really starts way earlier than graduation.
100%.
Yeah.
It should start freshman year,
Yeah.
which is also scary.
It is scary.
When you really, I mean, and it's a lot to put on anybody. I
Mhm.
also don't want to take away from the fact that that's a lot of pressure and
Yeah.
oftentimes why people feel so lost. But also, it goes back to this whole idea of like, feeling good in the uncomfortable situations, taking risk. What I try to tell, like I told my niece and a couple of like mentees that I've had, take risks. Like, you don't have to have stop waiting for the perfect plan. The
Yep.
perfect plan's not going to happen.
Yes.
And so just go with a plan.
Yep.
Try it.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, you turn back and you try something new. But this whole idea of like waiting for it to come to you, I think is really where I'm just like, nah,
Yeah.
you gotta go get it.
I, want to take a time to personally thank all of the people that helped make the launch of this podcast possible, especially to one of our sponsors, the SDSU Bookstore, who is providing all of the swag for our pilot series. Make sure you go grab merch. They have everything, crew necks, t-shirts, things for your dog. It's amazing. Go to the SDSU Bookstore, swag up. They'll hook you up. So what can they do? Like, let's say I'm going to graduate or I just graduated. It's kind of overwhelmed. There's so much opportunity that I can imagine. And sometimes I feel this too, that where do I start with researching, right? Like, I know that I want to have a job. I know that I have a few interests. What are some kind of tips that you would give folks to kind of just start some of that early career research?
Absolutely. Well, I think the nice thing is for students now and for people entering the workforce, actually anybody, even alumni that aren't just graduating, you have way more tools at your disposal than we did.
Mm,
And so we didn't have Chat GPT that could quickly pull stuff,
yeah.
so start there, start on YouTube, start on TikTok, like so many people now make these day in the life videos. They
Yeah.
make all, so now insight into a career is easier than ever. And
Mm.
so start there, like figure out kind of some of the stuff that you like to do. I actually did this with a mentee probably 2 months ago. He had honestly came to me with that exact situation.
Mm.
I don't know what I want to do. My degree's in this.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. I was like, well, let's do this. Take 2 weeks and I want you to write stuff down that you like to do. It doesn't have to be related to work, but just what are things that you like to do? And then do a second list. And I want you to start writing stuff down that in your current job, is there anything that you like or have seen other people do in their jobs that
Hmm.
even slightly piques a little fire? Like,
Yep.
oh, that kind of pull all that out,
Mm.
figure out what that part is. And then let's take that. And I actually told him, I said, then let's use chat. Do jobs exist in this? Like, what does this look like? Because
Mm.
I think it is hard, when you're at that age or you're at that point in your life, you're trying to figure stuff out. I totally get it. But also at the same time, when you're going and asking for help, I can only do so much. I can't pick a career for you. And
Right.
so it's take some time to explore that, use what you have at your disposal and start there.
Yep.
And then from there, I would recommend, okay, what do those jobs look like? Where do they exist?
Mhm.
And maybe we'll get to this in a little bit, but I have
Yeah.
this whole process that I think through when
Okay.
as it relates to people being open to opportunity, because I think that's a challenge too that I won't speak on now, but I think where new grads can get stuck is they're so fixated on it has to be this.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I think opportunity stops knocking
Yeah.
in instances like that.
Let's go there because
Okay.
I was going to ask. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Okay.
great transition.
So one thing I would highly recommend, and I see this time and time again, is San Diego is incredible. It's
Mhm.
beautiful. I'll be completely honest. I have nothing against the Bay, but I didn't want to move to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Like that was not somewhere that I envisioned a
Mm.
life. And I mean, obviously, as you've seen, I've been in the Bay, Austin, Seattle, and now in Boise. And every single place has given me a new adventure, has forced me to grow.
Yeah.
But also, oftentimes I do get asked, they're just like, I feel like you have so many opportunities. I'm like, I keep all the doors open,
Mm.
all the doors.
Yep.
You might not want to move to Cincinnati, but when the job search is getting rough,
Yeah.
you might want to consider, like, is this a short-term sacrifice I'm willing to make
Mm.
to get the experience I need? Because no city has endless jobs,
Yeah.
and so I think that's the hard part is when you're in San Diego, I mean, you're in arguably the most incredible city in the United States. And so don't get me wrong, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand why people don't
Yeah.
want to leave. But when you're that early on in your career, be cautious with how much you say no.
Yep.
Like, yes, figure out what your values are. And if that really is one, then you do you. And I really hope that opportunity, and it probably will,
Mm-hmm.
but don't limit yourself too much. Figure out what those things really are.
Yeah.
And just take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
Just leap. Because
Yeah.
I guarantee you're going to look back, and regardless of what that was, you will be able to pull from that. You
Mhm.
can learn from that, and it will get you to where you want to go. It just might look a little different than you imagined.
Yeah, such a great call out. It kind of reminds me of the importance of in your prep having something that's fixed and flexible as far as what you are prioritizing. And it seems like location should be one of the things that could be flexible if your life kind of grants you the ability to move in that way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've moved around a lot. You're saying be open to new opportunities. Is there any other things that you would say of like decoding job applications? Like, yeah, what,
It's a scary world, isn't it?
There's a lot of words on the job application. I just graduated. I'm putting it through chat. Like, help them out. Like, how we can decode some of these things, especially for, let's say, early career, first time career roles at a company.
Absolutely. It's actually really funny because still to this day, with everything that's available, the amount of resumes that I still see that do not match at all
Okay.
to the job is insane.
Really?
Insane.
Wow.
I always used to joke, and I honestly still make this point, and maybe high schools do require it now, but similar to like financial literacy,
Yep.
I actually think that there should be a required course on some type of entering the workforce type thing. And maybe it exists, but because there are just small tweaks.
Mm.
The amount of applications I see that get rejected, because they applied with one thing and I'm like, you didn't correlate it to anything
Yep.
on the job posting because you were like an apply and pray mentality and you
Yep.
were just submitting hundreds of applications and then you get to this point where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening. I've applied for, 1,000 jobs and no one's replied back. Did you use the same resume? Did you even look at the job posting or did you just see the title of the role you applied and hoped it would work?
Yep.
And so I think that that's something that anybody in the job search really needs to focus on, but it sounds so easy. Like sometimes when I say it, I almost think to myself, I'm like, duh.
Yeah.
But I see it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And it's just the minor tweaks. And that
Mhm.
takes 5 minutes.
Yes. Even
Just-
less.
Yes, right? Like
Yeah.
tailor it. It'll take you only 5 minutes, but you better believe that myth of like, it only takes a recruiter 15 seconds to, that is beyond true.
Okay, I was going to ask that.
Beyond true, Channelle.
Okay.
I can look at a resume and literally within 15 seconds, it's a yay or nay.
Really?
That fast.
Okay.
That fast.
Okay.
And
okay.
so if you don't have that stuff on there, like don't make it hard for a recruiter. That would be my other tip with decoding. When people try to get really fancy with their formats, hey, this is cute. But this took me 30 seconds to find where your first job was.
Hello.
Pass.
Right. No time.
Yeah. Efficiency should not be on here. So that's another thing too is
Okay.
don't give the recruiter any opportunity to say no. Make it easy for them.
And that starts with the initial application.
100%.
Before you're even meeting a person, talking to a person, you need to send that message through your resume, through the application.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then once you get there, obviously, then it's whole new slew of tips and tricks
Yeah.
for once you're in that phase.
Okay.
But to get it, people are always like, how do I stand out? Stop. Like sometimes I'm almost like, stop trying to do so much to be like, oh, you'll be different if you just do the basics,
Yep.
which is crazy,
Mhm.
but it's make sure the relevant stuff is on there. Make sure it's easy to read. And again, really focusing on don't give us a reason to say no.
Yes.
Take the job description and look at it as if you were a recruiter or a hiring manager. So if I was looking at your resume, that's the first question you should ask yourself. Well, it's asking for this type of experience. Did I talk about that at all? Did I try and even address that? No.
Yeah.
Well, then you're probably not getting an interview,
Exactly.
So that would be, especially for that initial step of like trying to get your application seen
Yeah.
and ideally to a screening phase. That would be really what I would focus on from the application perspective.
That's huge. I mean, and I used to get kind of years ago when I was prepping for, looking for jobs, but I still do it to this day. Like I have a different resume for each job.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the way it should be, truthfully.
Like different industries, I'm pivoting, I'm tweaking. And what I love, I'm going to connect it back to something you said earlier about the mindset. When you're reading that first job description, and let's just say you see something where it's like, oh, I don't have that skill. What I'm hearing you say is the flip of that is what experience do I have that can make that need? Right?
100%.
Versus immediately no, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're so right. We focus on like first glance, and we put so much emphasis on that. But read between the lines. Like maybe, and I actually love that you called that out. It's just like, well, they're asking for that skill. What is that going to be used for? And then how can you address it? Exactly what you said.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I love that you kind of mentioned like the fancy resumes. Okay. And I think too, maybe you can lean into it where it's like, depending on the company and the role, sometimes that is more appropriate versus
Fair.
less. Right. But I used to I had friends that were applying for creative jobs and I would see their resumes moving and jumping out the page. And I'm like, do I need that? I'm applying to be a program manager. I'm like, do I need that? So that's super, super helpful. What about, so we're talking about resumes, job applications. What about some tips on like LinkedIn? Like how should folks be using this effectively? What are some tips you have?
Actually it's something that I've noticed and I didn't think it worked until it did. So LinkedIn, I think we all, similar to applications, a lot of us just immediately want to lean on just spamming recruiters and who they think might be a hiring manager. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that doesn't work.
Yeah.
However, I think reliance or dependency on that one avenue is risky because I'll be completely honest, like, over the years, especially when I was truly in like 100% recruiting roles, the amount of in-mails we can't get through all of them and get through all of the stuff in our, applicant tracking system, direct
Mm,
applications, emails. So yes, there may be instances, and I actually have hired people who have reached out to me on LinkedIn. So it can work,
yeah.
but build the importance, especially now, on your brand
Mm,
and how you decide to build that speaks volumes. So
okay.
I'll just use, because you used program
Yeah, yeah,
manager
yeah.
in the early, so let's just say you were trying to get into like a program management role. Well, again, relying on tools that you have at your disposal, using AI to help you. Okay, for program managers, what are typically some of the skills and experiences they would have? What is some of that industry knowledge? And then start creating stuff that you can post about that is relevant. Because one thing I have seen is that people will start to build credibility, even if you don't read it.
Mm,
I might read Chanel's, I might see your post one day and I'm like, you know what? Actually, maybe I should reach out to Chanel because this is like the ninth time
yep.
I've seen her post. You're actually creating this sense of credibility. Now, we won't speak to whether or not what you're posting is accurate or not,
Right.
but you are creating this brand for yourself as a quote unquote program manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say one is creating the brand, two is consistency.
Mm,
I think LinkedIn does take effort.
yeah.
It's a strategic game.
Yep.
And so I have actually hired a couple of candidates where I've actually seen them consistently comment on different things that are related to the career they're trying to get.
Mm,
And they became so top of mind in my LinkedIn algorithm
yep.
that by the time it came to hiring for that, they actually popped up because they
Mm,
were so adamant, they were so consistent, and they for sure had a strategic play with what they were doing.
yep.
And so I would say it would be consistency and creating some form of a brand for yourself based on what you're trying to pursue
Yeah.
are the two. Again, the in-mails, they can work, but I wouldn't put one like all of your eggs in that basket.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to answer this, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Like, if your peers, colleagues, other recruiters, like, are getting spammed by like this, like, do we know who the spammers are? Like,
Oh,
are we tracking it?
I've clocked you from the beginning. Okay, I know who you are.
Okay, right, because that's a brand too.
Oh, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because
Okay.
that can be gray area and it
Mm,
can be controversial.
okay.
Like, but I will be completely honest that there are folks that will spam to the point where it can become a turnoff.
Mm,
It is no longer, oh, I admire their, perseverance. I admire their, I'm like, no, I'm going to admire when I click reject,
right.
And so I hate to say that,
Yeah.
but be cautious because you are inadvertently burning a bridge that wasn't really built to begin with,
Hello.
And so really, really being strategic of how you reach out and making it like personalize your reach outs. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I get a ton that are like, hey, it came across this role. Okay, kind of love the directness. Like, you're just like, you're getting to the point, but also that's the 100th one I've gotten today. And
Yeah.
so, if you do have recruiters and hiring managers that are able and are really good about reading their messages, how are you from there then going to be memorable?
Yep.
And so, some of the tips and tricks that I've seen that have been helpful is they'll pull something from a job description and they're like, "Hey, I noticed you were hiring for this. This particular thing stood out to me and I have done this to exemplify this," or almost bringing a success of yours to that
Mm,
particular piece of the job description.
yeah.
And then that was kind of their thing. And I was like, "Oh, you're not
Yep.
just hoping I read it. You're actually pulling something already."
Yeah.
And so that was unique and I was like, "Okay,
Okay.
that's helpful."
It's that
Yeah,
intention piece again.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um. Okay. I love that. And it just seems like the brand management and all of that starts pretty early on in establishing yourself and, to your point, building the credibility.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think brand management's interesting too, because I feel like you might think this way. I don't know. Like, I feel like brand looks a lot different today than it did when we were in college.
Yeah.
Because I feel like back then it was still very buttoned up, suit
Yeah.
and tie. And you and I were even joking about like, hey, how do I dress for, today? And
Cozy.
yeah, I was like guilty. And I was like, be yourself, like,
Yeah.
who you are. And I think that's part of it too, is like, I always tell people, I'm like, don't take away from who is authentically you,
Mm,
but just know that what you put out there, regardless of if it's socials or how you show up in person, everything you do everything you say, everything you write, that is your brand,
Yep.
whether you want it to be or not.
Yep.
And so it's okay if you do all of those things or whatever, but just know that that is shaping how someone views you, whether that's your intent or not.
Yeah.
And so brand is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
Even just in, if you ask me to go to coffee and then you flake 3 times, or,
Yep.
especially if you're asking someone for their time,
Mm-hmm.
that's your brand.
Yeah.
That becomes your brand. So just be really careful. I know it seems easy and nonchalant, especially when we're younger.
Yeah.
But that becomes viewed a certain way. And then you're closing doors before you even walk through them.
It's powerful, right? Don't burn the bridge before you take a step on it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. I loved your point around, hey, sending emails to recruiters is fine. Having kind of traction on LinkedIn is good. But it seems like some of the other feedback is that shouldn't be the only lever that you're using in job search, right?
Absolutely.
So can you give a few other kind of examples, things people can do to stay connected, build their network? What are some other things folks can do?
Absolutely. When I actually reflect back on SDSU, and I will take this literally with me to the very end, is that I am where I am because of my experiences at SDSU. The power of networking is incredible, but networking is so much bigger than I feel like what people normally define it as. They're like, yeah, I sent you like a LinkedIn request, or I went to that one fair. That's not networking.
Yeah.
Networking is relationships. And so how are you building relationships? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm very, very grateful, but almost every single one of my jobs that I have had and opportunities in life has been because someone has pulled me through, but it's been a pre-existing relationship.
Yes.
There's effort there. There's work there.
Yep.
I'm not the type that just goes and I'm like, hey, Channelle, nice to meet you. And then that's it. And then 6 months later, I'm like, hey, can you recommend me for this? Hey, that may work.
Yeah.
But that is likely not going to work for the long term. You have to put the effort in and build those relationships. I mean, when I look back now, the letters of recommendation, the people that have pulled me into jobs that I didn't even apply for.
Yeah.
Like even right now, my current role, I didn't apply.
Yep.
It was someone that I know from before. They knew my skills.
Yeah.
And again, we had put the time in where it's like often when I'm reaching out, some of the most successful people in professional networking are networking on non-professional things.
Yep.
When you really like you and I, if we're going and grabbing a coffee, it's not because I'm trying to ask you about a job search or it's how are you?
Correct.
Let's create that, because guaranteed at some point down the line, they're going to be a lot more willing and eager to pull you in or to recommend you because you actually built a genuine relationship. Now, one question that you may get asked from that is like, that sounds time consuming. Yeah, it is.
Right.
But relationships are time consuming. They, and you have to put that work in if you want to see the fruits from it. And so that would be my honestly biggest takeaway, especially as it relates to networking, is like build your community, who are your mentors, build your personal board of directors, like who are going to be those people that will champion you, because I guarantee you that's why I've had the opportunities. It's from what I intentionally built, and it did take time.
Yep.
It took time.
Yep. And what I love about that is that building of your board of directors, which I love that, by the way. Yes. And I want to see your BOD. Let's exchange board of directors. I love that. Who's on my board? I need to rotate some folks out. Right? Yeah, I need some new board members.
And you should, 100%.
But it seems like, right, when we talk about brand and the relationships, like that starts day one of like college, right? And I know for me personally too, similarly and different, like people sometimes will extend opportunities or be open to a conversation based off the strength of who I was on campus. And just to see, and I think about a word that's come up a lot in our conversation from you is consistency, right? Like even in, preparing for today, right? Our first podcast of the Power of the Aztec Network, I'm like, Kodi is dope. I haven't seen him in a long time. Like we're casual on like Instagram and LinkedIn, but like I know like from our time in college, like you were just so amazing, so impactful. And I've been able to like passively watch online that continue to be. And I DM'd you. I slid in your DMs.
You did, yes.
like, Kodi, and so I just think about, for me personally, like of what you're saying, how those relationships, the impact that you have, being consistent about that, it resonates and people hold on to that.
Absolutely. Which is kind of crazy to think like how long that lasts.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. When I think back to you or any of the other people in this incredible group that continues to grow as leaders on campus, you really do reflect back.
Yeah.
And that impression lasts so long and it sits. And so it actually really is like 10 years from now, how do you want people to remember you? Are you going to be someone that your friend or the president of your chapter, they're going to be a leader in 10 years? Were you someone that they would want to pull in?
Yeah.
Or were you someone that created a brand for yourself that people don't want to pull you in? And so I think it is, you're absolutely right. It's powerful. And now with social media, everything's on display. And so just
Mhm.
figuring out how you want your brand to be perceived and how you want to be remembered, I think is incredible.
Okay. I'm curious. Let's connect your two worlds, and you
Yeah.
probably have more than two worlds. But you mentioned you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader in kind of corporate space. How do you leverage kind of your lessons from corporate and San Diego State into being an entrepreneur? Like, what is that like?
Oh my gosh. The first thing I think I'll say is that being an entrepreneur has been the wildest journey ever. Like
Okay.
the amount of grit. And I think I mean, I knew this. I grew up with a dad who was an entrepreneur. He
Mm,
had many businesses that failed, some that succeeded, but ultimately, I do think that that ignited something in me. And I have always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur at some point.
yeah.
I'm so grateful for my corporate experience and it has shaped me.
Yeah.
San Diego State, the lessons I've learned from corporate have shaped how I want to become a leader and essentially a pioneer for now a business that I co-run with my business partner.
Yep.
And a lot of what that looks like truthfully is, as we're making decisions, I can pull so many different things. Like I go back to San Diego State lessons I learned on campus, the relationships, watching friends build their businesses, their brands. And then on the corporate side, a lot of it has been lessons learned on what I do and do not want to do as it
Mm,
relates to being an owner. Because I think now the exciting thing is you are now the pioneer of your business's culture and how you're going
yes.
to lead people.
Yeah.
And so it has been such an incredible journey because I've worked for great leaders and I've worked with leaders that I didn't love the way they led,
Mm-hmm.
but both were equally impactful.
Yes.
And so I think that, a lot of that has been pulled into it and I'm loving it. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a grind
Yeah.
and I'm grinding now because I know what I need to do, but it's been such a journey to be able to do all of that. I mean, even I've reconnected with folks that I haven't talked to in a long time and kind of got their advice. I'm like, "Hey, you've been running your business now.
Yep.
I'm in this space like Aztec leader to leader, like tell me about that.
Oh,
Like
I
what did
love
that
that.
look like?" And again, it goes back to that network. Like
Yes.
I know that if you ever needed something, I hope you would always know like, dang, Kodi and I haven't caught up in, but I feel like I could call him.
Yep.
And same thing, And so
I
I
kind of
think,
did that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you did. Yeah.
Kind of
Thank
did
you for calling. Yeah.
that. Oh, it's so real.
It's
But
so real.
yeah.
It's so real. But I would say everything I was able to pull,
Mm.
even when I don't know I'm pulling it.
Oh, it's so special. And I hear so many stories about just the true power of SDSU alumni, the experience, the shared values. Because one of the things that I love, and especially with folks that I've stayed connected to and even have kind of watched, is there's a grittiness about San Diego State, like in such a good, like we are hustlers.
The amount of times I've had that conversation is actually unreal.
Okay.
You are so right. And I think when I was here, obviously I was an ambassador. I was all of these things. So when, I would say like leadership starts here, I would just say it to say it. The fact that that resonates so true now to when you actually look back
Yeah.
at who has graduated from San Diego State, the number of community leaders, pioneers, entrepreneurs, visionaries, like there is so much that is bred
Yes.
here at San Diego State. And you are right. Like I actually tell people all the time, I'm actually really glad that I didn't go to another university or one that may be considered, especially back then, like more esteemed or more, because here we really do breed a culture of hustlers
Yep.
and grinders and
Yep.
people, a lot of folks that don't come from backgrounds that easily enable
Yep.
you to do one thing or another.
Yep.
And so when you get here, you're like, I'm going to make it happen. And we do it together. And look what's happening.
I know.
There's just this network of Aztecs literally creating waves through several industries, and it's incredible to watch.
It's
It's
amazing.
incredible. It inspires me as a business owner because I get to see all of these people, and I'm like, yes, I was like, I
Exactly.
knew that,
I went there.
I was just like, I was right there
I know.
too. Like, it's incredible.
I know.
And I can't wait to see what continues to evolve and who continues to come out of this institution. It's incredible.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Kodi, this has been a great conversation. I mean, so many gems that you're dropping, okay? We have to close with a fireside chat.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay,
Let's
so
do
no
it.
long thinking, first response. It's go
Oh,
mode.
okay.
Okay.
Hot seat. Yes. These are heating up in here.
We want to know, okay? Okay, first one. Favorite location on campus?
Campanile Walkway.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's just iconic.
Mm-hmm.
And I love iconic.
Okay.
Like when you look down and you see Hepner Hall at the end, and obviously I was a cheerleader too, so Bring It On plays a role in why
Hello.
that was so iconic. But it's also all the memories, like all of the student activity fairs that would be on that walkway, you know, all my tours looping back and forth. It's visually iconic and I just have so many memories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you still walk backwards? I've been wanting to ask that all day.
Actually, no. You know, it's actually really funny. I don't know the last time I did walk backwards.
Okay.
I don't, maybe we'll test it out afterwards to see if I could still do it. The fact that we would do that for an hour to an hour and a half is actually next level.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cardio.
thankfully, genetics in the Philippines gave me
Hello.
the legs that I have
Yeah.
because that took some strength.
It's impressive.
Some strength.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go-to order at Trujillo's.
Oh, girl, you're making me hungry. I fasted this morning. Oh, my. Probably what was it? The Sigma Chi Crunch Wrap.
Okay.
That one. Or, oh my gosh, I forget the name, but it was like the California burrito that had like the rolled taco in the middle.
Okay.
I forget what that was called, but oh my God.
We have some stuff to do.
Yeah. We got a mission to go on after this.
Okay, last one. Favorite class at San Diego State? Like course, professor?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, I would say it was my interviewing class. So I took an interviewing class with Rap.
Oh my gosh, I took that one too.
Oh my,
Yeah.
Wait, I think we were in class together.
I think we were. Yes, he was dope. Yeah.
Do you remember? I think we were in the same class. You had to interview for a job.
Yeah.
So I actually chose that I was interviewing for a WWE wrestler.
Wow.
And I remember Rap asking me, what would be your wrestler? And I was like, I would be a Christmas wrestler.
Christmas?
I would dress up in Christmas attire and I would wrestle on the main stage.
Okay.
I really, honestly, other people chose like actual, relevant careers. I was like, I would be a Christmas wrestler.
Okay.
I know. Clearly that hasn't happened,
Yes.
but hey, there's still a lot of life to
You
live.
are
You never know.
limitless.
You never know.
I'm going to gift you that for Christmas this year.
Thank you. I'm like, WWE, if you're watching, Christmas wrestler. Clocked it.
It's like, what a combo. Awesome. Well, Kodi, thank you again so much for joining us for our first ever episode of the Power of
Yay.
the Aztec Network.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Yay.
Go Aztecs.
Yeah. We could not have done today without a lot of awesome partnerships. And one that we want to acknowledge and recognize is the Associated Students Backdoor Studio, which is a pretty amazing facility. It has amazing resources that are accessible and free to students. So please make sure you take advantage and utilize this.